and I want to welcome everyone today. We are going to be talking about unlocking effective communication and content. My name is Lisa Apolinski. I am a content coach and have been dubbed as America's digital content futurist. And I am very excited to have with me for this conversation Mike Martin. Mike, can you introduce yourself really fast?
Sure. Yeah. Mike Martin. I'm the CEO of Top Down Strategies, which is also part of Focal Point International Coaching Association. You see my logo up there. And I spent 30 years as a management IT and ERP consultant, and then I decided to go into coaching. I do specialize in consultants and consulting firms, but I work with all different types of businesses and basically focus on core skills and where you are today and where you want to get to. I help consulting firms reach about 50% growth in 12 months is kind of the key thing that I focus on. And today I'll kind of be focused around communication skills, which is something very key into the coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know, Being able to share who we are, what we do, and why it's of value, and then getting our internal and external teams to buy into that premise is more critical than ever, as everyone on this call knows. And when Mike and I talked about what we wanted to share in this roughly hour, we realized there were three areas that really overlap with communication and content: being trustworthy, getting your message across, aka the style in which you share your message, and then how to remove saboteurs in your communication so that it becomes more effective. Um, and I'm gonna let Mike start with trust, because I think that's critical, and I'm sure there are a lot of overlaps into creating content with trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all starts with trust, right? Without trust, there's really nothing. And especially in business, as we're dealing with new people and people get to know us, right? There's that old adage, people do business with folks they know, like, and trust. Right. So first you have to get known, then they have to like you, right? Otherwise they won't bother with you. But the final thing is trust, and trust is so critical. I had the pleasure of meeting with David Horsauer, who worked with the Yankees and NASA, and he leads the Trust Edge Institute, and he has a great book on trust and leadership, and talks about, and actually I'm going to refer to a note here, the 8 pillars of trust. I'll just mention them. I'm not going to do a deep dive, but the 8 pillars of trust that he identifies are clarity, compassion. They're all C's, by the way: clarity, compassion, character, competency, commitment, connection, contribution, and consistency. So, having all of those aspects to your communication, your content, essentially everything you produce, every interaction, whether it be in person or written or what you put out on various platforms of social media, is essential to establishing that trust. And without that, you can really go nowhere. So, at least if you want to maybe open it up for conversation now, or any questions about those pillars, or what folks think about those pillars.
Yeah, let me add to it that it's interesting that in those C's is a lot of what I talk about with my coaching clients in terms of their content. Are you clear in your messaging? Can you break it down into short pieces where people are going to remember, like a magic word and phrase? Are you being consistent? And that doesn't mean that you have to post every day, every hour, but you need to be on some sort of a regular schedule so people know that you're going to show up. That's what consistency helps drive, that they know that you're committed and that you're actually going to show up and create content. And consistency can be many things to many people, but as long as you keep at it, because this is like everything else in digital marketing, it is a climb with no summit.
Mhm.
Everywhere that you are on that mountain, you still have 100% to go. And then just being able to have that compassion in your content. Um, the compassion for me helps people understand that you stand with them so that you're relatable, you understand the problems they're going through, they feel validated, and then they can envision themselves working with you to solve whatever problem and get to a future state of success. I think that compassion element is really critical. I read an email today from Mark Schaefer that was breaking down AI. And one of the things in AI that I think is really interesting is you can use it for information, but if that's the extent of where your content goes, that you're just providing information like features and benefits or a link to something, AI can do that. That's not really anything of value because they can find it anywhere. And if AI can do it, you probably need to level up. But if you look at how you can assist them and get them to that future state of success and something that resonates with them. One of the things, and Mark was in our conference on Monday, and I was a speaker there. One of the things that I talked about is, this idea of personal branding and having that connection. Personal branding has nothing to do with you. It's not about you. It's about your prospects and your clients. You need to put them in the center and figure out what works for them. And that's how you build trust quickly with your content. I would love to open it up for a second. Thank you, Michelle. I'd love to open it up for a second, see, how that feels with people, if that resonated. Trust is a huge component, and we talk about trust, but, do we actually put in the time to build that relationship?
Yeah, thank you. I would like to chime in if you don't mind.
Oh,
I agree
absolutely,
with you
Jess.
completely, Michelle. I love I love how you broke down compassion, because I thought, man, I'm a tech nerd. I don't, that compassion is it. I mean, it's something I certainly have, but how do I convey that? Right? Like that's
Yes.
a very interesting thing. So I love that you said, okay, that's how you make it relatable, right? Like a lot of that stuff for me. And I really struggle with the consistency. Man, do I struggle with the consistency. Because I went gung ho for about a year, got super crispy, and then just quit. So now I'm at a place of rebuilding, and I have to start back with all of that consistency. And it feels like a climb with no summit, like you said. Like it doesn't feel like there's a great reward, after getting all of that stuff done. So I would love to hear about how how you frame that consistency. You said it doesn't have to be everyday sort of scenario, but from a so when I'm coming back to my folks then that have been following me and continue to be interested in the things that I put out there, do I even address the like, hey, sorry, I've been gone for a while kind of thing? Do I just start from scratch? Like, how would you suggest I broach that communication? Like, we loved all the stuff you did and then you were gone, Jess. What happened?
So if you've built the community and built the relationship, people give allowances. There's a woman that I follow on YouTube. She does a cleaning channel. She was gone for 5 months and had no content out because her husband was going through some really bad health issues. And we just kind of waited, and she came back, and all she said was, "Thank you so much for supporting me," and then she, went right into her
Just carried
content.
on.
She just
Okay.
carried on because we didn't need a huge explanation from her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that consistent. Oh, Michelle, do you have something to say?
Oh no, I'm listening.
Oh, okay, awesome.
No, you're good.
Sorry, I
Awesome.
think that's my dog chiming in. I apologize.
Fantastic.
It's the
Well,
pug. You
good.
know how she is, Lisa.
Yes, beautiful pug. But that consistency, it also can be, don't feel like it has to be scheduled. That's another thing, Jess, when we work together with the coaching, it doesn't have to be every Monday I do this. If it feels like it's a task that you're trying to check off, it's not going to be a natural habit for you. But it does pay off, even if it's oddly scheduled. And I'll give you an example. At the beginning of the year, I did an experiment where I was posting on LinkedIn every single day, including the weekends. And I wanted to see what that did for impressions, for conversation, for followers. And I saw a reasonable increase, but it wasn't anything like, where it would go off the charts. And I've kind of dialed back, and I do post, but I post when it makes sense for me and when I think I have something to share of value. And one of the posts that I did, I was on vacation in Cozumel, and I wanted to, because I felt inspired, I wanted to take a picture of this beautiful Frappuccino with this beautiful tropical background, to talk about, stopping and just absorbing small things and just taking a breath. Sometimes you just need to take a breath. And as I was taking the photo, a mosquito landed on my thumb, and I must not have noticed it right away. And I went to kill it, and let's just say it was very squishy and went all over my phone. And I was like, son of a, and it was gross. And so
Yeah.
I changed my post to say, sometimes the best laid plans don't go well, and that's okay. At least it's authentic. And I should have put hashtag bloody story, but I didn't. I didn't want to be totally gross. And it trended on Google. I got an alert a couple days ago. It was picked up by Google and it trended. It was, to me, not a throwaway post, but just capturing something in the moment. And then I was like, that's super weird. But I'm a person that doesn't believe in trying to, get the algorithms and try to, figure them out and, leverage it against, Google or LinkedIn. I'm all about trying to inspire people, trying to educate people, and trying to provide content that's of value, whether it's entertainment or it helps them solve a problem, or it just makes them think at a different angle. And that's it. So if you think about those things, and I'm gonna point out Parisa. Parisa's really good, and I'm trying to be more like her and doing more video on LinkedIn because she's really good at it, and she does it consistently. And I'm like, I got to do more of that. But that's something that I struggle with. So everyone has their struggle within the content that they create. But if we think about quality over quantity, and we think about always looking at our prospects and what we can do for them, I think that consistency will naturally come, because something will happen in your day where you will quickly post something, or it'll inspire you to do a vlog or write an article or something, or mention it on a podcast or a webinar, and it will help you to constantly show up and move that needle forward. And the second point we're going to talk about, the different styles, I think really plays into that too. People absorb information in different ways, and we share information in different ways. The nice thing about digital is you can test, you can see how one feels. You can try something on. If you don't like it, you can put it back. You can try something else. And probably in 6 months, there'll be a different way to do it, and then you can try it on again. There's a lot of variety. And to me, that's also where that compassion comes into, that you're sharing things in a variety of ways. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, do a few posts, with your dog, to show life on the road, and how the technology that you use, and you're using it every single day, really kind of, pushes that envelope and helps people to have that freedom. Parisa has her hand up.
Jess, may I offer a thought to you?
Please.
When was the last time you wrote a love letter to your ideal client?
I don't know that I have done that at all. Why are you up here? But that's a great idea. She's very crazy. A love letter to my
Oh my gosh,
ideal
I love
client.
that.
I love that too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
The reason for me asking this question, even though you didn't ask me why I was asking a question. I'll tell you anyway. I'll open the kimono. It becomes easy to create once it stops residing in your head and it's living in your spirit. And I'm saying this to you as a hyper analytical person. I am the most analytical person I know. And it only works to be a consistent producer, writer, creator, whatever it is that you want to call it, when it's living in your spirit and not living up here.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that's a fantastic, that's a fantastic point. And I think that's where I got, because when I first started, it was all coming from the heart. Like, I want to share how cool the things are that we do. And then I got to a point of being very focused only on the quantity and also the quality, making sure it was, better, more professionally looking video, that kind of stuff. And then I just got so overwhelmed. I was like, nope. So
yeah,
I appreciate
that's
that.
like
I think I
having
will
an
restart with
emotional
that.
attachment to an outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
you.
resonating a lot with everything that everyone's sharing, because it wouldn't be human to expect ourselves to show up in a robotic way, obviously, but yet we sometimes get into that mode because that's like the mindset that rules the internet. And so I relate a lot with what you said, Jess, in your personal experience. And I did not feel apologetic at all, because I'm literally operating from a place of, when I'm going to show up, I am going to show up as my best self. And, to inspire, like I totally resonate, Lisa, with everything you've shared. But I'm also human, and I have times where I have to take care of my own self and people I love in my life. And so during those times, I'm not the person that's going to be showing up on social media, griping and complaining and just spitting it all out. Like, I don't do that, because that does not build up anybody. But at the same time, when I would get those moments of like, okay, I want to share, then I would. But so that doesn't look like, ideally consistent, or it hasn't. But it's because in those moments, I feel I had my personal journey, that I just really needed to grow through, and come out stronger, and being able to show up even better for the people I'm here to serve. And so, and then the other challenge that I do come across sometimes in business, especially, is that there's this expectation of how a professional shows up versus how when you're just like on your personal, social media handle. So there's just these expectations. So for me, finding the balancing act between the personal and professional is where, it has been a challenge sometimes, because I do tend to be more on the professional side. And but I'm starting to find my voice more on who I am at my core, and being able to share that. Like, I know who I am, but sometimes sharing that in a way that will capture my professional audience too, is where I'm still finding, the magic balance there. But I just, do everything I can, one day at a time. That's basically it. But I do appreciate you sharing from like the compassion, like that part you shared in the beginning. Oh my Lord, that really, really resonated deeply, because I literally just had an opportunity yesterday from somebody on Alignable, where this lady was the most adorable, lovely lady, but just her confidence, I don't know what's happened in her life, but her confidence was just completely just shattered. And when she decided to connect with me a second time, in my calendar, I have options for her to choose from. Like, what does she need most right now? And she chose leadership development. And so I wanted to find out more about that, like why she chose that. And then she shared. And I just, I shared from my heart and my own journey and experience, like what's impacted me, and shared with her. And she was just so delighted. Like I did all of that for free. I even gave her like, business tips here and there about her, because a lot of people struggle with the unique value proposition because it's really hard to come up with a really good one. So I just gave her some tips that, have worked for me, and I share with clients. And she was just so blessed by that. And I just, was like, that's because of what I've grown through in the past, 2 years, that I was able to get to this point and be able to share from my heart, but still add a ton of value, not expect anything in return. That's it. It takes like growing through that process in our personal lives to be able to share with substance, not just value like on just strictly business, but like really hear and see and support someone coming from that place, that human place. So thank you so much, everyone, for all you've shared. It's so wonderful to be here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I might, I'd like to chime in on that, because I think that's something I resonate too with Michelle, that I've often struggled with being very analytical, and all business. And
Mhm.
one of the big lessons I've learned is about being vulnerable. And I think that's one of the ways that you can bridge that personal and professional. In the situation you were describing, it sounds like you were sharing more and there was a little bit of vulnerability there. And I think that's so key, because that's very important for establishing trust, between people. And just to kind of take that also and attach it to your point, Lisa, around, information and AI and adding that human element. One of the things that I take from my consulting background is having a point of view and having
Yes.
a perspective on it rather than just being pure informational. So I think if we can roll together this idea of being personal, being vulnerable, and having our point of view all being very authentic, then we'll be very different than AI. And in a way, we'll have almost a different type of consistency of message. Not always, time or schedule, but that consistency of authentic messaging, super important.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And again, I'm going to refer to Mark Schaefer's email today. And he just started doing those again. So he had stopped doing emails for a while, and now he's suddenly doing them again. And I was like, oh, cool. Another way for him to show up. He talked about how probably in the future, just like we don't say I did the math with a calculator. People don't care, right? You did the math. It doesn't matter if you did it longhand or if you used a calculator. It's just the way it is. Um, it's probably going to go that way with AI. You're not going to say I wrote the content with AI. You're just going to say I created content. And that's probably, that's a natural thing. And as long as we're looking at, like Michelle was saying, sharing with substance, I love that. Share with substance, because that's really the key. And also how you share, and the methods in which you share, your sharing style, I think are also highly critical into developing that relationship and trust. And Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the sharing styles. I know there are probably several that I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. So what I do a lot with my clients is use disc profiles. Anyone heard of disc or had a disc done before? Yeah. All right. So we're all very familiar with that. But just maybe a little bit as a refresher, I find this very revealing and very important for early stage, right? And when I'm coaching a new client, right, this is a great way for us to get to know each other. I share my disc profile, which is a high C followed immediately by a slight difference with a very high D. So I have, extrovert and introvert kind of battling all the time, and it's all in the analytical task world. So, you've got the high C, which is the compliance, your archetype there would be like a Bill Gates. And that's only 13% of the population. Then you have the high D, which is the director. So like say a Tiger Woods or somebody who's really athletic and aggressive there. That's also only 17% of the population. And those are the task oriented. compliant is introverted, director is extroverted on the task side. Then on the people side, you got the supporter. So like a Mother Teresa, that's 32%. And then your influencer, like an Oprah, and that's 38%. So when I learned about the percentages, I thought that was quite interesting that the task orientation is much smaller than the people orientation. And it makes sense, right? Because we're social creatures. So what I like to do is think of a grid with the C, D, and the S and I, and then introvert, extrovert, and task and people. And what I try to work with my clients on training, and I'm still working on this, is to try and build the skill to identify what people are. And I find that that grid is helpful. Are they more of a people person or a task person? Are they introvert, extrovert? Then I kind of can guess what they are. And one thing about this being 4 quadrants is if we only focus on our natural style, we may be missing out on 75% of opportunities or clean, clear communication. And so it's very important to understand those styles and try to adapt and work with what you suspect the other style is.
Yes, absolutely. And again, it's that idea of making your audience your focus versus yourself. And that's really putting us in a different comfort zone, right? So if we go back to content and consistency, I know there are areas where we tend to naturally gravitate. Some people like to do long articles and emails. Some people like to do video. Some people like to do smaller things in podcasts. Some people like to be interviewed. Some people would rather do a webinar. To me, the magic there is to stretch outside of your natural tendency and just dip your toe into other areas and try it on and see how it feels. There are so many ways that you can create and repurpose your content so that you're able to use it in several channels in several ways. And there are so many AI tools now that help you to do that. I know that Opus.ai, I think it's Opus.ai, it can take this webinar and it can cut it into 2-minute segments. It naturally finds the segment and then it cuts it into smaller videos so that you can dole that out in a sequence. Or just grab what you feel is like the best capture and then send that out. You can take a long article and put it into ChatGPT and say, give me 3 bullet points that I can use in social media. There are so many ways to repurpose your content so that you are touching all of these different people in their element and where they absorb the information, the content.
And you can even have it change the tone for each of these styles and do 4 posts.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. You absolutely can. Yeah. So many things you can do. I always tell my clients that when you are creating content that you're looking at what is of value for your prospects, which will always be the case. The other thing that you have to think about is when you're repurposing your content, how are you making it slightly different? How are you taking the same content and maybe going at it from a different angle? So can you add a story in here or an image in here or a graphic where it's this, I don't want to say the same, but it's the same messaging and it's just told in different ways. My book, and I have it here, Persuaded with a Digital Content Story. Whoop, there we go. Ta-da. We talk about the 8 great Hollywood stories. There's only 8 of them. All the movies we've ever watched, all the TV shows we've ever watched, all the books we've ever read, the fiction books, they fall into 8 categories. That's it. That's what we know, and that's what we resonate towards. So why try to recreate the wheel? It's looking at your content from that standpoint and seeing if I shared it as, I was overcoming a problem, could I also share it if there was a funny anecdote within that, and make it a little more of a comedy. Again, it's cutting from the same cloth in different ways and styling a little different with your content to be able to get your message across and share that important information in a different way, which again will blow AI out of the water. You can certainly leverage AI to create the information or to pull it, and then you put your DNA spin on it, your brand DNA spin on it, and showcase it in a different way so that people are still getting that information. And again, the value that they see the value in working with you because you are a thought leader, and leaders always lead. Oh, and Michelle said, us, human design has been so helpful to deepen self-discovery. Absolutely. And it's sharing different information and experience from different angles. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me open it up and see if anyone has any comments. If you're struggling with how you are repurposing your content or how you are showing up for different ways that people take in information and, make it part of their own DNA. Does anybody have a question or a comment or a thought? Mark, how about you? And anything coming up for you, especially with your business, which, and Mark, do you want to tell people a little bit about what you do really fast?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, this has been very interesting. We're a LinkedIn lead generation agency. We also do email and postcards and phone calls and referral strategies, but our real bread and butter is LinkedIn and helping our clients grow. And a big piece of that is content. And a couple of thoughts I had when they're reading off the C's, it really applies to the content. I was thinking of client-centric, which means, to your point, Lisa, all about them and not about us. And I was trying to figure out what the C would stand for from a trust and leadership perspective, but I think making it all about the other person, I'm an introvert, so I'm an S and a C on the DISC profile. And it's funny, I'll go to a networking event and I'll talk to somebody and they'll spend like 95% of the talking. And by the end of that conversation, they'll say, wow, this has been such a great conversation. And but it's all been about them. And I think that's important with trust and with content. The other thing I wanted to mention, I had one lady that I work with, and she equated repurposing content similar to a Thanksgiving turkey, where think of all the dishes post-Thanksgiving that you can make out of that one Thanksgiving turkey. And I don't know why, that's just always stuck with me. And so when it comes to content, I just think of that Thanksgiving turkey and eating 12 different variations of that over the next week or two. And but no, this has been very insightful, and I can tell this is a very genuine, very caring group. So that's always great to see.
Yeah, and
love that.
there are that's where the magic words and phrases come in that are so powerful when you have someone who dominates a conversation, and they don't know that they're doing it. It's not like they do it from bad intent. But if you ever are on a podcast or on a being interviewed live, and you have multiple people or on a panel, and you have one that just talks a lot, it's not that it's bad, it's that you can leverage it to really use, like Michelle was saying, a value proposition, a magic word and phrase that ties into your brand, your value that you bring, right? Why you're worth the price, and how you are doing things better, different, faster, stronger, more complete, cheaper than everybody else. And you can do it in a very short amount of time. And these are things that you have to practice. But when you get these magic words and phrases down and they're easily repeatable, right? So they're clear and they're repeatable, and the interviewer latches onto them because that's what they're looking for. You've just added in one of those other C's, right? You're thinking about the style of the person you're speaking to, and you're making sure that it works for them. And anybody who's a journalist or anything like that, absolutely will be resonating and grabbing onto those. Mel, you have your hand up.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank everyone for your perspective. It's been very entertaining and interesting so far, and I want to say that I don't struggle with being too analytical. No one would ever say that that's one of my issues. But if you'll humor me for a second, I want to read something that I think touches on a lot of the topics that we've covered today. As Lisa knows, every single week we send out an email to our distributor network. We're in the trade show business, and it's called Design Monday, and it's just new designs that we're sharing with them. But on top of it, there's always a little bit of a text header on that. And the one that I sent coincidentally on last Sunday was titled, "Can I Trust Them?" And let me kind of read it, what I wrote. It says, according to Seth Godin, everyone asks themselves this question, and everyone looks for different cues to answer it. The thing is, almost no one decides the answer to the trustworthy question based on the fine print, your policies, or your positions on critical issues of national importance. We decide long before that. People watch what you do, they listen to others, they seek out clues of the tiniest sort, unquote. When trade show companies lose their customers' trust, they rarely instantly crater. Instead, they slowly fade away until they are stories we share in bars or industry events. The conversation starts with, do you remember working with company Y or X? And ends with, they lost their way, or they quit listening, or they no longer treated me like a customer. Sadly, when it's gone, it's gone. The winners are the winners, are those companies that made promises and kept them again and again and again. So, we talk about repurposing content. There's an example where I've repurposed an older Seth Godin post that he did, and tried to put that in our personality or our voice and send it out to our distributor networks, but also kind of put a stake in the ground about who we are and what we stand for.
Absolutely. And that's so funny. So in my other book, The Most Amazing Marketing Book Ever, one of the things that I talk about in chapter 6 on customer experience is that your customer is engaging with you long before they ever hand over any money. It is a very long process in the beginning where they are discovering you, learning about you, seeing what value you have, seeing if they can trust you, and then deciding whether or not they want to do business with you. And what you were saying is so true. It's unbelievable. It could be a decade from now that someone hires me. I've had people who have followed me for years, and then finally it was like, oh yeah, I can use Lisa's services now. It is a slow burn, long game. And if you are trying to do short transactional engagement, you're going to leave opportunities on the table. Absolutely. Love that. Awesome. Any other thoughts? Because I'm excited to get to sabatours, because I'm sure I do some of these. And I want to hear what Mike has to say about how we sabotage our communication, because there's ways you absolutely sabotage your content.
Yeah, and this is actually quite a deep topic. And really what I'm talking about here is actually sort of an operating system that is very similar to, like I use the analogy of colors, right? All colors are essentially built from 3 colors, right? Red, blue, and yellow. And so this is based on the positive intelligence work done by Shirzad. And basically, they did a fractional analysis and figured out that there are the saboteur brain and the sage brain, right? And saboteurs come from our childhood when they were there to protect us from the dangers of the world. And they linger with us into adulthood where they no longer need that purpose. We don't need them for that purpose, but what they end up doing is interfering, right? And so what we want to do is train ourselves to shift from the saboteurs leading and the judge, which is the number one saboteur, right, leading the conversation and leading our actions and wrecking what we're trying to do and getting in the way of our content and communications, to a sage brain, which is that has 5 sort of superpowers. And so I'll talk about the saboteurs. There's 8 of them, and actually you can get an assessment and it'll tell you which ones yours are. But you have the judge, which is the master saboteur. That's either judging yourself or others at all times. This is the voice that says, where imposter syndrome comes from, right? That comes directly from the judge. It's the one that's saying, oh, you're not doing this right, or people aren't going to like it, or whatever, or you're judging others. They're not doing it up to my standard, and all that. So the judge is the master one. And then it has assistants. There's the avoider, where you focus on only the fun things and don't do the things that are good for you. There's the controller, where you're trying to influence other people. There's the hyperachiever, which is my number one saboteur by a mile. And this is where, you always have to be accomplishing things and you always have to be doing them very well. There's a hyper rational, which is everything's got to be logical. Hyper vigilant, which is always on the lookout for, things that are dangerous. You have the pleaser, people pleasing. Restless, where you always have to be active. The stickler, where it has to be a certain way and that's it. Or the victim, which is, it's a way to try and we feel that being a victim or a martyr is how we get love and affection, right? And so what we want to do is shift over to the sage brain, and number one, understanding these saboteurs and knowing what they are and knowing what our tendencies are, that immediately reduces their power. And so we want to try and work on reducing their power and influence over us and activate the sage part of the brain, which that's where we handle challenges with a clear and calm mind and positive emotions. And so it may sound crazy, but one of the trainings to help do this is something called PQ reps, and that stands for positive intelligent quotient. And these are very simple things. Breath, focusing on your breath, and you only need 10 seconds, or you can, try and wiggle your toes and count them for 10 seconds, or focus on a distant sound and then a close sound, or just feel the rising, or, close your eyes and feel the temperature of the air as it goes in and out. And doing these on a regular basis actually change your brain and activate the sage part of it. And this has been proven in just about 8 weeks, you can make a shift and your MRI will look different. If you take an MRI of the brain, it will actually look different. And so this is the foundation for almost all of coaching, right? You can look at any coaching methodology and boil it down to the fractional analysis that it centers around these things. So it's super powerful. I'm certainly happy to discuss more. If anybody's interested, you can reach out on LinkedIn. I put my thing in there. It's a topic I'm supremely fascinated with because it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, and when you mentioned stickler, I immediately look at Parisa, because Parisa wrote The Modern Badass Leader, and it's something that resonates with me. And I absolutely, as a modern badass, I'm like, everything has to be this way, just so. And so I immediately look at Parisa and I'm like, oh, that's one of that's one of my things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Parisa's laughing at me. Thank you. Yeah. Michelle, you're gonna say something? Oh,
No, just wanted to
okay.
laugh with you because
Yeah.
that's me too.
Yeah, yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, and when we write our content, a lot of those saboteurs can affect how we show up for our audiences. It will stifle being genuine. It will stifle taking a little bit of risk and putting something out there that maybe is a little controversial or not the yes sir, yes ma'am content. I've seen a lot of content that has been very bland, because people are afraid to step outside of a natural zone. And I apologize, I keep hitting my mic. Whack. Step out of a natural zone and fall down a little bit. I think it's okay to muff up a little bit with content. And, again, when you've built your community and you've built that trust, if you step in it a little, people give you allowances. And that's where that trust and consistency really help to remove some of these saboteurs, that can affect the content that you create, and making sure that it has value always, and not shy away from, maybe having a hard conversation or saying, listen, I know this is popular. Let me tell you why, in my thought leadership, my expert opinion, we should be looking at a different way, or we should be considering X, Y, or Z. Absolutely. I'd love to open it up and see if anyone has a comment or a question around saboteurs with communication and content. Parisa.
Yeah, so I mean, we're all human, right? So we all have our own trolls that live rent free. And if we feel something so passionately, there is an opportunity cost to keeping that silent to placate the troll, right? That's kind of why I like playing with the idea of the love letter is how much in love am I with this client, or the idea of the client, and how much is serving them so powerfully important to me, such that it far outweighs whatever BS the troll or any of my trolls have to say, even though daily I have crises of confidence. So I am acknowledging that it's difficult, and I'm saying, if you really feel your calling, lean into it. I am not unsympathetic so much as, if you don't feel like the work that you do derives enjoyment for you, find something else to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really powerful. Jess, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just when you read through all of those, I was writing them down and just kind of tempering how I felt about each of them when you said it. Man, that hyperachiever thing really hit me hard, Mike.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear more about how that really shows up, because I'm not sure. It definitely pulled something on me, but I'm not exactly sure how in a communication form that comes out. So I would love to have you expand on that one a little bit, since you do battle that one yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It can manifest in so many ways, but I'll take an example that's, content. You may be so focused on it being impactful and achieving something from this content that it colors or even prevents you from sharing it, or even in conversations. And I think it goes along with that disc style, where you can be trying to achieve or have a goal in mind for that conversation. And if people start to get off topic and it goes haywire, and I've this is firsthand happened to me about 10 billion times, you start to get really frustrated, because like, listen, we've got to get to these 4 agenda items, and they're very important, and this was the reason we're meeting, and you start to get all like this. And it can really hamper the communication, it can hamper the effectiveness. And you know what, it can also alienate the other people if you're constantly pushing them, and not allowing them the room to breathe and share what they feel is, what they have to share.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think too, when some of the early content that I did, I was so focused on, from, I think, that achiever level, it providing X for these kinds of people, because I was very focused on the quantity, that I got some comments. They were like, oh, I thought it was an ad. They like scrolled past it. Right. So I took so much time to make it like so great. And then people weren't interacting. And the comments I got from the people I asked about it were like, oh, that looked absolutely like an ad. Like it's too good to be like authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it goes right back to what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Being vulnerable, being authentic, having that human, not being so much like AI and differentiating, it can totally get in the way of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And it's very easy in our content to play a small game. What I want for you is to play a much bigger game where you are showing up as the thought leader that you are, and you are sharing that that new information and that new way of thinking so that people can level up. They can unlock their own potential and be inspired to move up. And that's why I think everyone on this call has that ability. But if you play a smaller game with your content, it's never going to get there. You're going to be in that sea of sameness where everyone is sharing the same messaging. And we really want to expand past that, and letting go of some of these saboteurs, or understanding how they might be affecting what you are creating in terms of your content, I think can really be helpful for sure.
And the
Yeah.
hyperachiever one can really get in the way because you're trying to make a sale, you're trying to get a new client, you're trying to accomplish whatever it is, and it prevents you from taking the time. And really, actually, you get much further along in a sale when you don't sell, right? When you're just being authentic, creating the relationship. And that may be, like Lisa's saying, a longer game, but that hyperachiever is like, no, I got to close a new client this month.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether your client becomes a client in a day or a decade, you always can be relentlessly helpful and help them to move forward. And they're going to remember that. I actually had a conversation with one of my clients. He called me, I think it was last night. And he was looking at talking to this one group for some lead funnel work, and they're well known, well established, and he felt like it was just pressure, 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 buy, you need to sign now. And he was like, no, you haven't developed a relationship with me. I don't know anything about you. I don't have that trust factor with you yet. And he didn't go with them. He went with somebody else, who wasn't as well known, but the person took the time to actually assist and provide things, even if he never purchased from him. And he is like, that's the person I want to do business with, someone who's going to have my back. So I think that's, I think that's really important.
Let me tell a quick 20-second story. I had a severe damage to my car one time, and I went to 3 body shops. The first one looks at it and is like, woohoo, wow, this is terrible. This is going to cost so much money, blah, blah, blah. Tell me how bad it was, how expensive. The second one could barely be bothered with my business. And the third one said, hey, you know what? I can make sure your bumper is kind of not rubbing your tire here. Took a screwdriver and quickly fixed one critical thing on it. And that was all he did. And guess who I went with? The guy who, gave me the value, didn't try to pressure sales me, or didn't ignore me, and just wanted to help out. He's like, I want to make sure you're okay here. Let me quick fix this with a screwdriver.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to do, right? We need to just be providing that value and being that guy, that third guy, right? All the time for the guy at the body shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we were almost to the top of the hour. Before you leave, I want to introduce, I'm going to put it in the chat right now, the next webinar. Michelle Salinas, who is on, is going to be my guest speaker. I'm so excited about this. It's talking about knowing and showing your business value, understanding what value you provide and why it's worth the price, and articulating that in a clear and concise manner. Because if you don't, you can actually be leaving money on the table. And none of us want to do that. If we're having an interaction with someone, we want to make sure they understand quickly and clearly what value we provide and why we're worth the price of admission. That is going to be on Thursday, September 9th at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. So it'll be right after Labor Day. I'm looking forward to this. Even I need to work on this. Sometimes I can get a little winded because I'm really excited about what I do, but I need to be able to give someone a chance to hear it and digest it and then ask me questions. So super excited about that. And I'm really excited to have Michelle on to do that. I will simply be the MC and Michelle will be running the show. Very
I think
excited.
that's actually the 7th. I just signed up and it looks like that's the 7th as the Thursday.
Oh, you were right. I got to change the calendar thing. Whoops. It is September 7th. I will correct that. Ta-da. That's all right. That's
Happy
an
to
easy
connect
fix.
on LinkedIn with anybody. I posted my LinkedIn there. Really happy to connect if you're interested and want to talk more about any of those sabatours, because the real key to the sabatours is getting into the sage brain, which we haven't really delved deep into, but that's how you solve all that. So happy to have more conversations if anyone's interested.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes. And I hope that you are able to register. If you aren't able to attend, go ahead and register anyway. You will get a recording. You'll get an email after the fact that will have a recording for it. But I think it's going to be a fantastic conversation. And thank you so much for attending. Mike, thank you for being on with me
Thank
and
you.
for the great conversation. And we will see you the next time.
Yeah, nice to
Thank
meet
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thanks.
Have a
Take
great
care,
one.
everyone.